All right, here's a few news articles that were interesting. This one here, I thought was pretty fun. This is from China.
Strange pneumonia cases reported.
Roger that.
January.
We discovered a new virus. It's dangerous.
It's only a flu.
Wear a mask.
Don't wear a mask.
Stay at home.
It's violating human rights.
Building temporary hospitals.
It's a concentration camp.
Built in 10 days.
Show up.
Time to lockdown.
How barbaric.
February.
It's overwhelming our medical system.
Look how backward China is.
The virus is killing doctors.
Typical third world.
It's airborne.
It'll magically go away in April.
Everyone stay at home.
Violation of human rights.
March.
Our numbers are now dropping.
Impossible. Look at Italy.
We wore masks.
You lied to us.
We made our data public.
You kept everything secret.
Your people are now dying.
You didn't warn us.
We said it was dangerous.
You lied.
April.
We said it was airborne.
You gave false data. Why didn't you warn us?
We said it was dangerous.
The virus is not dangerous, but millions of Chinese are dead. Even though the virus is not dangerous, we are correct. Even though we contradict ourselves.
Gosh, just listen to yourself.
That's right. You lied. We did nothing for 3 months. And because the WHO agrees with China, we're cutting funding for the WHO.
Are you listening to yourselves?
We are always correct, even though we contradict ourselves.
That's what I love best about you Americans. Your consistency.
Anyway, this is a propaganda war, and we'll see where it goes, but I think China is more right than the US on it. My right-wing friends have these, the right-wingers are trying to claim China caused this somehow by lying to people, but the press I've read says, yes, China did that with the previous one, SARS. They refused to tell the truth and covered it up and were greatly humiliated, and so they did a much better job with this one, having already been through the unfortunate plan of trying to lie about it. It looks like the US has to learn that lesson. So the response here is, since there is no leadership at the federal level at all, and contradiction every day. There are federal guidelines. The next day, Trump praises people for breaking the federal guidelines and then says they're going to adhere them. And there just seems to be no guidance at all at the top. So our states and cities and counties are all just doing random different things. So Georgia, for some reason, is going to stop doing road tests for driver's license because of the pandemic. So I guess they don't want the testers to get sick. This isn't a strange response to me. And the testing shortage is apparently so severe in the United States that they cannot find 100 tests to test the US senators who want to go back into session. That is extremely hard to believe, that even with the access to high priority medicine, they can't find 100 tests, but that's what they're saying. So the Senate can't be tested before they go back in session. The United Nations has put out a social distancing app, which is supposed to use Bluetooth to tell you when you're close to someone and then pop up a message telling them to stay further away, and it apparently doesn't work at all. It's just total garbage. Doesn't even perform its listed function. This is an AI generator, which is kind of fun. So you see the limitations of AI. This is an artificial intelligence thing making memes, and it doesn't seem very impressive as part of artificial intelligence goes. Apple's going to release a Mac based on an ARM soon. So that would be interesting because everything's been on Intel processing until now. And Los Angeles is offering free coronavirus testing to everyone, although they have a limited number of tests, and I don't know, I think it'll just run out. You can also get tests in San Francisco now, although I don't know if it's easy to get them if there's enough to meet the demand. But the testing is better than it was in America, although still far before where it needs to be. And that's what this one's about. The scientists and medical people say that we don't even have 10% of the testing level we would have to have, and even less than that of the contract tracing ability that we would have to open up the states. But I think 20 or 30 states are in fact opening up. So it appears that we're just going to ignore the risk of a recurrence and open up anyway, because there is nobody actually setting clear rules, and the states seem to be bowing to pressure from businesses. Anyway, I'll do that one in a minute. This is an interesting issue. Now the federal government now is pushing, the Republicans are pushing very hard, Mitch McConnell is, for giving businesses immunity from coronavirus liability so that businesses can force their employees to work in unsafe conditions and endanger the health of their customers and their employees and then not be sued for that. And this is an interesting issue. I mean, they're pushing this as an essential way to get business going again. And this is, I think, a lawyer, a professor of law, explaining what makes sense to me, that you are not required to do anything impossible to protect people. You're just required, according to the law, to show that you took reasonable precautions. And so it is not necessary to suddenly let people get away with taking unreasonable risks just because of an emergency. The law doesn't say that. And but anyway, it's an interesting alternative view that we do not need to accept people from this. They probably will, though, because that's the way our government works. They get emotional about an issue and then pass crazy laws like the Patriot Act. So you can expect a lot of extreme laws to be passed in the emotion of an emergency, which in retrospect don't seem that wise. Anyway, this is the Splunk class, and we're just coming to the end of it. So I recommend you sign up for this. It's on my homepage towards the bottom. North American Bots Day. You Boss of the Sock you can do here for extra credit. And if you sign up for this, you can do the Boss of the Sock live from Splunk later this summer. So that should be fun. I've signed up. So it's down here when it happens. So on July 16, you can compete in a national competition to find security problems in Splunk. So it's a good thing to do. I've won this thing twice, my students and I on teams. Not the national one, but little local regional ones. So I'm looking forward to doing that. All right. And later today, we're going to do the COBOL CTF online at 2 o'clock for Pacific hackers. Anybody can come to that if they like. Although I should point out that COBOL is kind of insane to learn. It's a language that's as old as I am. It is not one of the top 10 most popular languages. So if you don't know any programming, you should probably focus on learning something normal like Java or Python. You only learn COBOL if you're sort of frivolous. Anyway, so I don't see any chat messages coming in. Let's just proceed to the lecture about Splunk. One more administrative thing. We're here in the class, and we are at the last day of class today, the last lecture, such as it is, and then the final exam will be up there in about a week and a half. For a week, you can take it. And if you want to know your scores, just look in Canvas. There is an announcement I just put up that tells you how to calculate your scores. There's a total of 300 points in the whole class, and 90%'s an A, 80%'s a B, and so on. So you should be able to predict your score. And if you need more points, then you can always do the Boss of the Sock, which has 300 extra points. You could, in fact, do enough of that to make up for everything else. Because I think the Boss of the Sock is really very good. And this is an older version of Boss of the Sock. The July event will be a new version of it. All right, so let's talk about lookups. So sometimes you have data, something like an IP address, and you'd rather have something more descriptive associated with that IP address. Or you might have zip codes and you want to put up the state or something. So you can pull up a lookup, and then you can take the raw data and you can add data from a lookup, which turned this into more descriptive things like first name, last name, email from a customer ID number or something. That's the point of it. It's just a translation of data through a table. So you upload a table of input data and output fields, and then you can add that to your queries. So here's a lookup file where you have product ID number, and then you turn that into product name, category ID, price, sale price, and code, and so on. And so now if you have in the database information about product IDs, you can do queries on product IDs, and you can add these output fields to it. So you just go to the lookups field in settings, and you can add new files and import definitions and set up automatic lookups. So you just upload a CSV, comma separated value file here, and upload it to the server. And then you go and you can check it with the input lookup command, which starts with a pipe, which confused me at first. Pipe input lookup, then you can just view to see what's in that file to make sure it got up there correctly. And then you can make a lookup definition based on the file with a name that will look in that table. And after that, you can add it to queries. And there's an advanced field I've never used with complicated settings like the number of matches, but for normal tables, you just have one match anyway. And then you can use the lookup command. So I think I'll just demonstrate this. I've got a demo ready to go. Let me bring up my demos notes here to make sure. All right, so what I did was I started, let me bring up my Firefox. There, all right. So here's search and reporting. I'm using the same boss of the SOC stuff that we've been using all along. And so let me just rearrange my screens so I can see my instructions more easily. Okay, so what I decided to do was use this query here with no sampling and all time. And what this does is it finds all the HTTP streams, which is all the web traffic, and it just counts them by source IP, an HTTP method. So in this boss of the stock data, there are 6 IP addresses that sent web requests, or there are 6 lines, and there's more, more coming. And they might have used different HTTP methods, get and head and post and so on. And you can see over here the number there are. So that's just a list of data with an IP address. And I might want to translate that IP address to something better. So I made an attribution CSV file here, which I've got here. And let me just make it big and put it on the screen. And if you've been doing the boss of the SOC, you know, part of the thing you have to do is find out which server has which purpose. So this one here is the actual web server serving this I'm Really Not Batman web page. These two I didn't know about when I made this file. This one is the Poison Ivy server that's used to host an image file and attack it. And here's another attacker that's using the Accumetric scanner. So this is what they call attribution in threat research, where somebody has hacked you, they put viruses on your machine, and you figure out who they are. Like that's the government of China, that's Russian criminals, or whoever they are. So this is my attribution file. So I called this thing attributions.csv and save it. And it's just a comma separated value. The first line gives you names for these fields, and the next line gives you values for these fields. So you just put that up. Let me move this over here to get it out of the way and shrink it down some. There we are. And the first thing I have to do is put that up as a lookup table. So starting in Splunk, I go to Settings, Lookups. First, I need to put that table up here with a lookup table file. I'll make this bigger. So I click Lookup Table Files. And here's all the lookup tables that are included by default by Splunk. I make a new tile here. And all I do is upload that file. So I go to my, it's in here, their attributions.csv, open that. And now I send it up, and I'm going to call it Sam Demo Attributions.csv, just so it's easy for me to find it and delete it later. So I send that up. And it's going, now I don't see it here easily because they're sorted in some alphabetical by something else. If I want to see it, I can just search for any string that's in it. And there it is. It went into this folder, ops, Splunk, etc., whatever. Splunk chose where to put it, but it has the name I specified. So I can check it already by going here and to search. And then I can put in pipe, lookup. Just have to remember exactly what I called it, which is Sam Demo Attributions.csv. So if I got that correct and I search and it doesn't matter what time it is, doesn't like it. It's input lookup, that's why. Okay, input. Let's try that. There we are. And all this does is echo the contents of the file so I can check and see that it did get correctly imported into Splunk. I can't use it in a query yet, though. I have to create a lookup definition for that. So I go Settings, Lookups, Lookup Definitions, and I have to make a new one of them. So it's going to be for the search app. The name of my new definition is going to be SAM demo attribution. And it's going to be file based on a file. I don't know what these other options are, but anyway, based on a file. And whoa, file-based is what I wanted, didn't mean to change it. And now I just have to choose the file off this list. So I go down looking for SAM, and there it is. So that's the game, and I'm not going to do any of the fancy stuff. Just a plain ordinary lookup is all I want right now. So now that I've done that, I can go back to search. And now I should be able to make a query using it. So I saved one here. All right. So let's start with this one. I just have stream of HTTP. And now, if I try to look things up here, it's going to fail. I mean, I did this earlier, but I was preparing this. Let me show you what happens. So if I now try to look up the IP and change this to all time, I'm going to get no results. Oh, for one thing, this thing is spelled wrong. Let's fix that. Attribution or attributions, we're going to see. All right, so now I was able to find it. And it found some events. That's interesting by IP. But anyway, let me go to the one that the thing that troubles me though is I called this IP, and it's not going to have a field called IP to match with it. The field it has to match is actually called CIP. So what I had to do before was put in this rename. And so let me put that in there. I'm just going to go to the final one that I worked out after a few tries here. Rename, let's put in the rename first. All right. And then the stats. This will get me back to the same one I had before. At least it did when I was preparing this there. So that's the one. Let's see how this looks. That's what I wanted to show you. So now it gives you the name here and the method and the count, and here they come. So here's the, instead of giving me an IP address, it's turned it into this attrib field, which is what I attributed it. So here's the web server, here's the attribution scanner, here's the poison ivy server, here's the two I didn't figure out yet. So that's what I had to do. And the only reason I had to do the rename is because the name I used in my CSV file did not exactly equal the name in the database. Anyway, that's how you actually create and use a lookup. And now that I'm done with it, I'm going to delete that lookup. So I'll go to Settings, Lookups, and I'm actually going to delete both of these things. Let's delete the definition. So a definition had SAM in it. So I delete that. And if I go back to lookups, the table file also had SAM in it. And I can delete that just to keep things clean. All right, so that's what I wanted to show you about lookups. And so that's the game. There, you can also make automatic lookups. And you define these fields. The fields have to exist in your events. And you define the lookup field, and I guess this will automatically be applied to queries. Oh, and you have to specify the output fields. So, but you don't have to explicitly specify the lookup. You can give me the price by product ID, product name. You just specify the field and it will automatically find it and look it up. All right. You can also make time-based lookups, so it will look things up by time, and change times into other fields, and so on. All right. And the last thing you can do is make scheduled reports and alerts. These are things that will automatically run at some regular period of time, like every week or every day, whatever you like. And they can send it by email. They can put it in a log. You know, these things, as you can see, would be quite useful in a large enterprise environment. So some kind of report is, you can just open up the regular report to see what's happening. So you create a search, then you save it as a save menu. You'll call it a report. and you just enter a title and save it. And then you click schedule, and you can automatically change the schedule. So it runs every week or any other time period you like. And you can choose the time range used for it. So it's like a weekly report and it always reflects sales for the last week or something like that. And schedule the time frame for it. And then you decide what the output should be. You can log the event in a log table. So it creates an event you can query later, put it in a lookup, put it in a telemetry endpoint if you have such a thing. You run a script, send an email, send an HTTP request to a URL. So, you know, they've thought of everything. So you can integrate it with all the other systems you might have to keep track of what's happening at your company. So you can send an email here to any list of email addresses you want. And here's how you can give people permissions to manage those reports. Determine who runs it and who owns it. And you can embed the report in various objects. I know you can embed them in dashboards and probably in other objects too. And then you can make alerts, which are not regular reports. When an event happens, it sends an emergency output, like it detects an attack in progress or something. And so it can log an event or send an email or perform a custom action for that. This way you can use Splunk a little bit like an intrusion detection system, although I wouldn't recommend that. Splunk is very heavy and slow. In my opinion, real IDS like Suricata would probably be more effective, at least for small business. Big businesses might do this, or the alert might warn you about something else. Anyway, so you create a search, create an alert with a title and description, just like a report. Then you decide who's allowed to access your alert. And you can do real-time or scheduled alert types. I've never used real-time anything in Splunk because with my weak servers, I don't have enough power to run it all the time. Again, this is something to be expensive in terms of CPU time to run Splunk in real time where it's just constantly searching. That is, if I was the boss, I would be concerned about how much extra resources we'd have to do that. I'd have to have a good justification for it. Anyway, you can schedule it, the alert, to run periodically to check for a condition. I would think a more realistic thing than detecting an attack in progress would be to detect something like a server hard disk is getting full and inform you about that. And you'd really only have to check for that once a day or once an hour or something. And then you have trigger conditions specifying when the alert will happen. And you can do it in real time or you can do it scheduled. And once you run your alert, if something was to happen, like it just gets full, you probably don't want it to keep sending an alert every hour from that point on. You can set it to just send one alert and not keep repeating it. And that's the game here. And I say the same old actions. You can send it to almost anything, make an HTTP request to go to some other monitoring system, and so on. You choose your action, and you can log an event. But of course, you have to have administrator privileges here. You're actually writing into the log. So that's not something a low privilege user could do. But you can log the event. And then, of course, if you're going to log the event, you have to specify all the information that goes in that log. So you have to specify the same thing for emails. You specify the subject and the body and the type of email and so on for it. And you can view these alerts. They're available and you can edit them once you've created them, just like queries or reports or anything like that. You can change the permissions. So you can make an alert and then delegate it to be editable by some lesser employee who is less privileged, so they don't get to delete data out of Splunk, but they do get to edit alerts. And I can see how useful this is. I used to do this many years ago before Splunk with custom scripts in scripting languages so companies could make regular reports of progress and such. And Splunk is clearly hoping to get into that market where you use it for ordinary business activities like payrolls and customers that are late on making their payments. And those are reports you always need to make at a business. People who have ordered product, but they haven't received it yet and too much time has passed. There's a lot of things that happen at your company, and you really would like to have some kind of regular report of these exceptions and problem conditions. So There's a class after this you can take, although I don't think it's free, but this is all you have to do to get the Splunk certification I recommend. And they have other reference Splunk classes here. So, by the way, I should mention, I already mentioned you can get extra credit in this course by doing the Boss of the SOC on my webpage. And another thing you can do, of course, is get the real certification. Although I don't know where you can take a test during a lockdown, that will end, but you can get this certification. And if you do, you'll get an A. Let me know if you do that. I've had a few students do that in the past. And that's it for the lecture. You should just send in your modules. If you don't have access to a Splunk server, you can make a free Google Linux server and put Splunk on there. And if you need help from me, you can catch me at any of my scheduled classes. There's about another week or so of City College semester going. So I'm here right now for the 9 o'clock class. I'll be here again on Zoom at 1 o'clock for the exploit development class. And then next week on Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So you can come to any of them and ask for help if you like. Or, all right. So I'm going to stop the recording, but I'll leave the share going.
Yep.